Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Weekly Code Quickies, your weekly updates for tech news, coding tricks and tips and more. As always, I'm your host Norbert PM, and in this episode we will talk about how old is your coding language? That's right, we're going to talk about how old coding languages are. Now, before we get into the video, liking and sharing our content really helps us out a lot and also helps others by spreading the word. And by subscribing to our channel and clicking that notification bell, you'll be constantly up to date with the latest and greatest. Now, with this being said, let's get into the video. The very first programming language family that we're going to talk about is the C family. Now, C is a general-purpose procedural computer programming language supporting structured programming, lexical variable scope, and resourcing with static typed system. By design, C provides constructs that map efficiently to typical machine instructions. Making its first appearance in 1972 makes it 49 years old. Succeeded later on by C++, which is also a general-purpose programming language created as an extension of the C programming language, also known as C with classes. Making its first appearance in 1985 makes it 36 years old. And last but not least in the C family is C#, which was developed around the 2000s by Microsoft as being part of its .NET initiative and later approved as an international standard by ECMA. Now, both C++ and C# are kind of used in game development, so if you're into that, then hey, those two are for you. Now, C# appeared in the 2000s, which makes it, well, 21 years old. Next up is Java, not to be confused with JavaScript. Java is a set of computer software and specifications developed by James Gosling. Java is used in a wide variety of computing platforms, from embedded devices and mobile phones. First making its appearance in 1996 makes it 25 years old. Now, JavaScript, not to be confused with regular Java, often abbreviated as JS, is a programming language that conforms to the ECMAScript specifications. Alongside HTML and CSS, JavaScript is one of the core technologies of the World Wide Web. Over 97% of the websites use its client-side for web page behavior. Also, all major web browsers have a dedicated JavaScript engine to execute the code on the user's device. Making its first appearance in 1995 makes it 26 years old. Next up, TypeScript, not to be confused with JavaScript. TypeScript is a programming language developed and maintained by Microsoft. It is a strict syntactical superset of JavaScript and adds optional static typing to the language. TypeScript is designed for the development of large applications and hence compiled into JavaScript. As TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript, existing JavaScript programs are also valid TypeScript programs. Making its first appearance in 2012 makes it 9 years old. Next up, our beloved HTML, short for Hypertext Markup Language. So, not quite a programming language, but a markup language. HTML is the standard markup language for documents designed to be displayed in a web browser. It can be assisted by technologies such as cascading style sheet or CSS and scripting languages such as JavaScript. Making its first appearance in 1993 makes it 28 years old. Now, because we were talking about CSS, cascading style sheets is a style sheet language used for describing the presentation of a document written in markup language, such as HTML, and makes CSS a cornerstone technology of the World Wide Web. Alongside HTML and JavaScript, it is a must-known language. First appeared in 1996, makes it also 25 years old. And alongside comes the big brother of CSS, which is Sass. Sass stands short for Synthetically Awesome Style Sheet, and it is a preprocessor scripting language that is interpreted or compiled into cascading style sheet or CSS. Making its first appearance in 2006 makes it 15 years old. At the foundation on each every good website or backend stands Node.JS. Node.js is an open source cross-platform backend JavaScript runtime engine that runs in the V8 engine and executes JavaScript code outside a web browser. Node.js lets developers use JavaScript to write command line tools for server-side scripting, running scripts for the server-side to produce dynamic web pages content before the page is sent to the user's web browser. Making its first appearance in 2009 makes it 12 years old. PHP is a general-purpose scripting language created towards web development. It was originally created by Danish-Canadian programmer Rasmus Lerdorf, I hope I said his name right, and PHP originally stood for Personal Home Page, but it now stands for Hypertext Preprocessor. Making its first appearance in 1995 makes it 26 years old. And along came the snake, Python. Python is an interpreted high-level general-purpose programming language. Its language constructs as well as its object-oriented approach aim to help programmers write clear, logical code for small and large-scale projects. Python is dynamically typed and garbage collected. It supports multiple programming paradigms, including structured, object-oriented, and functional programming. Python is often described as a battery-included language due to its comprehensive standard library. Making its first appearance in 1991 makes it 30 years old. And now the the Ruby within the programming languages is an interpreted high-level general-purpose programming language, and it was designed and developed by Yukihiro Matsumoto in Japan, that is. Ruby is dynamically typed and uses garbage collection and just-in-time compilation. It supports multiple programming paradigms, including procedural, object-oriented, and functional programming. Making its first appearance in 1995, it is at this time 26 years old. Objective-C is a general-purpose object-oriented programming language that adds a Smalltalk-style messaging to the C programming language. Objective-C was the standard programming language supported by Apple for developing macOS, and also iOS applications using their respective application programming interface APIs Cocoa and Cocoa Touch. Making its first appearance in 1984 makes it 37 years old. And along came Swift, which is a general-purpose multi-paradigm compiled programming language developed by Apple Inc. and the open source community. Swift was developed as a replacement of Apple's earlier programming language, which you just saw, Objective-C, as Objective-C had been largely unchanged since the early 1980s and lacked modern language features. Swift works with Apple's Cocoa and Cocoa Touch frameworks, and a key aspect of Swift's design was the ability to interoperate with a huge body of existing Objective-C code developed for Apple's products over the previous decades. Making its first appearance in 2014 makes it 7 years old. Kotlin is a cross-platform, statically typed, general-purpose programming language with typed inference. Kotlin is designed to interoperate fully with Java, and the JVM version of Kotlin's standard library depends on the Java class library. But type inference also allows its syntax to be more concise. In 2019, Google announced that the Kotlin programming language is now its preferred language for Android app developers. Making its first appearance in 2011 makes it 10 years old. And now, last but not least, as I promised, the oldest programming language, and also the one that I learned way back when I was learning engineering, was Fortran. Fortran is a general-purpose compiled imperative programming language that is especially suited to numeric computations and scientific computing. Originally developed by IBM for scientific and engineering applications, Fortran came to subsequently dominate scientific computing. I swear to God, it was awful. It was just horror working in Fortran. But nevertheless, I made it. I got my diploma as a software engineer, and here I am now many years later and still hate it. So making his first appearance in 1957 makes it 64 years old. Woo! Hey everybody, so if you enjoyed this video, if you want to see more, then check out the crash courses on JavaScript, CSS, HTML, and also Sass, which are linked down in the description below or somewhere here on the screen.